There is an untamed land some call the ends of the earth. A land of thundering herds of horses. A land of wild, rugged beauty. A land of warm, hospitable people. The land is Mongolia. And this is the little-known story of the Mongolian people. 800 years ago, they conquered and ruled the world. But today, they're struggling to find their place in the modern world. After centuries of living in the shadows, light is dawning on the people at the ends of the earth. In the year 1174, here on the vast rolling steppes of Mongolia, a conqueror was born. He grew to become the great Genghis Khan. In the early 1200s, he united the diverse Mongol tribes into the most fierce, brutal fighting force the world has ever known. Under the iron fist of Genghis Khan, great armies of Mongol horsemen thundered across these plains to conquer most of northern China. In military campaigns of untold violence, Mongol horsemen subdued kingdom after kingdom, claiming an empire that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. Its northern border cut across Russia, and in the south it swept up all of Persia. From the rising of the sun to its setting, the Mongolian people shook the world. For nearly 2 centuries they were considered invincible. The empire of Genghis Khan, his sons and grandsons, became greater and more expansive than that of Alexander the Great, or even the Roman Empire. What we call Mongolia today is what remains of that vast Mongol Empire. In 1266, during the golden years of the Mongolian Empire, the great Kublai Khan ruled over the kingdom. In that year, he met with the father of Marco Polo and sent an official request to the Pope in Rome. He wrote, "Send to me 100 teachers of the Christian faith, able to clearly show that the law of Christ is best. If persuaded, I and all under my rule will become his followers." When he sent this message to the Pope, Kublai Khan was the most powerful ruler on earth. His request for 100 Christian teachers offered an opportunity for Christian ministry unparalleled in history. Polo returned to Rome, where he found only 2 men willing to go to Mongolia. But the perils of the long journey forced them to turn back. Kublai Khan never received his 100 Christian teachers, and the message they were invited to bring never reached the hearts of the people at the ends of the earth. The great Kublai Khan persisted in his efforts to establish a new religion among his people. But instead of Christianity, he turned to the Buddhism of Tibet. He built Buddhist monasteries, appointed Tibetan Buddhist monks to his court. Over the next 6.5 centuries, the teaching of Tibetan Buddhism spread across Central Asia, capturing the hearts and minds of the Mongolian people. When the great Mongol kingdom began declining in the late 14th century, Buddhism continued growing. When the Chinese conquered Mongolia in the 18th century, Buddhism grew even stronger. At the turn of the 20th century, Mongolia was considered the most religious nation on earth. Buddhism reigned supreme with over 7,000 temples scattered across the country. Then in 1924, the shadow of Soviet communism fell. Mongolia became the world's second communist state. Communist leaders immediately began overturning centuries of religious and cultural tradition. The legacy of Genghis Khan and the empire he once ruled was systematically suppressed. The heart of the Mongolian people was wounded more during 70 years of Soviet oppression than in all her history. Then in 1990, a powerful wave of change swept across Eastern Europe, reaching far east to the Mongolian People's Republic. Mongolians flooded the streets demanding change. The news media in the West barely covered the story. But the outcome was as dramatic for Mongolians as for the people of East Berlin. For the first time, the Mongolian people won the right to have free democratic elections. Today, Soviet communists no longer control Mongolia. In the absence of Soviet rule, there is new hope for the 2 million people of Mongolia. For the first time in 70 years, they are free to choose a new path for themselves.
I get excited at the creative ways that God works to reach the peoples of this world. Just a year ago, Dave and Ginny Bass and their family from Waterloo, Iowa, went to Mongolia, where they've spent this last year working in a variety of ministries. Dave's a retired policeman who had gone to Mongolia to show the Jesus film several times over the last years. With his heart touched for the peoples of this land, he was invited to teach English in the local police academy. This past year, he's ministered to policemen, worked with street kids, evangelized his neighbors, and generally laid the foundations for church planting in the days ahead. Dave and Ginny are now raising support to return to Mongolia to begin as our first Wesleyan church planters. Isn't it exciting how God uses people from all walks of life to do His bidding?